Hello and welcome to the Trauma-Informed SLP. Woohoo! I am Kim Neely. Hope you guys are doing okay out there. If you've noticed, I'm doing something a little different with my microphone in terms of holding it with my hand. I'm hoping this will decrease the chance of me hitting it with my hand while I'm talking with my hands, because that's what I do a lot. And I'm also hoping it gives me something to do with my hands. So maybe I won't use like a fidget, because I do have a fidget with me, but I also drop it sometimes and make noise. So hopefully this will make things easier. I can just put that down over there. On today's video, I am going to be talking about my ADHD Hot Takes. ADHD Hot Takes, where Kim talks about the stuff that she doesn't agree with. Hot Takes. Yeah, that's a bad theme song, but you know, YouTube hack. If you make it up on spot, who can copyright that? I just made that up, and I don't think anyone's gonna want to copyright it. I want to do this video because I have been sitting on my ADHD diagnosis for a lot longer than I have this thought that I might be a UDHD or ADHD. I got up a mnemonic to help me with that because I kept saying ODHD for the longest time. So aw as in like, DHD. That's what I go with. My mouth doesn't always listen to my brain. It doesn't always do what my brain tells it to do. So I want to talk about some things that are out there that are common kind of rhetoric around ADHD, especially for late diagnosed ADHDers, adult ADHDers like myself, that I don't really like. I have differing opinions from the sort of common knowledge that's out there. So I'm going to do some hot takes. Hot take number one is that a lot, like I would say over 90% of the type of stuff you find online, the type of advice, the articles and such about adult ADHDers and being diagnosed as an ADHD adult and what do you do about it now, a lot of that is so ableist, you guys. So ableist. It is like saturated ableism. There is so much out there. And what I mean by that is so many articles and stuff like to give you advice. And I see it even on like Reddit and stuff where there's always the advice that has that feeling of like, if you just do this, you're always just one step away from being like totally fine and neurotypical and life will be all sunshine and rainbows and you'll be fine. If you just ADHDers, you just have to, you know? And it's all different stuff. All the justs are different stuff for the same person. So it's actually a giant bucket of just this one thing. It's totally the How to Train Your Dragon, like you just pointed to all of me kind of feeling, like 100%. It's that, because it's always like, it's like, if you just do these 50 things or these 200 things, you know, or you just do these 50 things and then also the follow-up article of more 50 things and even more 50 things. I think that is just a sign of how entrenched the ableist idea that ADHDers are just one step away from being normal, when we're not. We're wired differently. We're different. We're different brains. We're never just gonna be neurotypical. That's not gonna happen. Okay. With that said, let's move to my hot take number 2, which this is kind of more of like an annoyance for me, I guess. And I think the cat's already out of the bag. I think 2 different terms from 2 different sources have become confounded into one thing on social media and get talked about like it's the same thing. And I just want to clarify it because that bothers me. You know, I want the words to have the right meaning when we talk about it. And I think the cat's out of the bag. I think my saying this isn't actually going to change anything, but nonetheless, I'm going to give it a try anyway. So let's go. Rejection sensitivity and rejection sensitive dysphoria are 2 different things. And the bigger part of this hot take, really, what I probably should have led with, I don't think rejection sensitive dysphoria is really a thing. I think it's the first term, rejection sensitivity. Hot take. Okay, so let me break that down for you. So rejection sensitivity came from, as far as I know, as far as my research has shown, it came from trauma literature, specifically about children who grew up in some sort of abusive environment. And it was used to describe children for whom these kids try their darndest to keep authorities as happy as possible with them. And they perceive tiny rejections, tiny signs of criticisms from authority figures like teachers and such. They'll see it as a big deal that they need to do a really big thing to make up for, because it's their brain recognizing a pattern with their abuser, essentially. It's a completely natural reaction, completely normal reaction to being in an abusive environment where an authority figure is abusing you, is teasing you, bullying you, verbal abuse, physical abuse, whatever it is, okay? And so what happens in those environments is the kids' brains start to try to predict when the abuser is going to be unhappy with them and when the true danger, the true threat to them is going to occur. And their brain starts to become very sensitive to noticing tiny little signs that the abuser's not happy with them. And then the brain will panic. They'll go into their survival mode, or they'll go into fawn response, particularly fawn response, to try to avoid the abuse, right? To try to keep themselves safe from that abuse. That's rejection sensitivity, at least the origin of the term. Rejection sensitive dysphoria. This term was actually developed from a psychiatrist in the United States, Dr. William Dodson. Psychiatrists in the United States are physicians. They are the ones that you go to monitor your medication and to get access to medication. So if you need Adderall, or if you're like me and you're on Adderall and antidepressants, I see a nurse practitioner who specializes in psychiatry, but psychiatrist or someone who specializes with it or someone who works under a psychiatrist is the one you have to check in with. And for my Adderall, for example, I have to have an appointment every 3 months, I believe it is. I think it's 3 months, to continue to receive my Adderall prescription. Okay. When you go into these, just to explain this a little bit for folks who've never done this before, you go to them and you're going to get asked questions about how things are going. And particularly as an adult, especially if you're a late diagnosed adult, you're going to get asked about how is work going? How is it going for performance reviews? How are you managing to get all your tasks done at work on time? Things like that, right? Now, Dr. Dodson specializes in adults with ADHD. I don't know if they're always late diagnosed, but they're definitely adults with ADHD. So not students, not kids, adults, people out in the workforce. And if those people come to him either seeking medication or looking to maintain their medication with him, he has to ask those questions. It's an important part of knowing, is the medication working? Is the dosage still correct? And it's also an important part of knowing, like, does this person need to be referred to mental health counseling? Do they need a psychologist, someone who doesn't do the prescriptions as much as they do strategies and mental health stuff, okay? More of the behavioral mental health stuff, like how you're thinking and all that. So he came up with the term because he noticed his adult ADHDers, i.e. the patients he specialized with, so the patients he sees most of the time, these are the people he's seeing. They're coming to him for medication, meaning they're struggling, probably struggling without it, and probably definitely don't want to be without it. So he ends up asking these questions of them, and they end up telling him about criticisms they're facing, about, their boss said they need to work on this, or they had trouble with this person, or this person says I do this and I don't know, do I need to fix this or whatever, right? And he interpreted this as being a sign that these ADHDers, who were likely showing some emotions around those criticisms and what they were sharing with him, he saw this and he interpreted this to mean that the adult ADHDers are hypersensitive to criticisms, because he's hearing them describe criticisms that are actually not big deals. These are like little things that happen to everybody at every job. That's how he's hearing it. And these patients are having big emotional reactions to these criticisms. So he interpreted this to mean that ADHDers inherently have bigger emotional experiences, and our limbic system, our emotional system, is just wired to be hypersensitive. It's like too much emotion. Okay. Emotions are too big. So here's my issue with that. I got a couple of issues. One, at the time of my recording this video, there is no empirical evidence on this. And I don't think there ever will be in adult humans, at least with the study type techniques we have these days to know about brain systems, because If you do like an fMRI study, for example, to see the emotional activation of ADHDers and non-ADHDers under some kind of emotional distress, you're not going to be able to differentiate that from the type of activation we see for trauma survivors. Because trauma survivors are also going to have an increased limbic response and an increased like survival mode type physiological response to a trauma trigger, to an emotional memory of a threat that they've experienced. Just the same as an ADHDer having an increased response to this criticism or perceived rejection. And here's the thing, at least from my experience, and quite frankly also from a lot of the experience of neurodivergents out there talking about this stuff, we experience a lot of rejection that ends up being a big deal later on, like from a young age, right? We get a lot of, well, you shouldn't be like this. You should try better. You should try harder to be like this. You're a little too lazy, or you're a little too that. And you need to just. It's like my point number 1. You just need to, right? That's what we hear all the time growing up as kids. And when we get to adults, it doesn't stop at jobs, right? We get into a job, we might miss the signs that someone is angry with us because we'll miss those passive aggressive signs. We don't realize that this criticism is actually the beginning of the end and the shoe is dropping, and we're actually going to get barraged with like the giant list of 50,000 things we have to change about ourselves in order to maintain that job. And we're not going to feel very welcome anymore. And we're either going to quit on our own accord and leave, or we're going to get pushed out, or we're going to get fired. And these are real threats that have real consequences, because changing jobs, it takes effort. It takes money. You have to save up stuff, if you can save up stuff, to allow for lapse in employment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is a real issue that adult ADHDers face. It is a real issue with systemic bias, with discrimination, with employers not wanting to provide accommodations. This is a real cost to being an adult with ADHD in the United States. And I think it's very fair to say that it's probably rejection sensitivity. It's fair to say that a lot of adult ADHDers have had such a negative experience with an authority figure kind of verbally abusing, quite frankly, us, and kind of picking on us and bullying us about our differences, that it has had real world threat, real world consequences. And it makes a lot of sense that our brains are very reactive, and the trauma gets triggered by, oh no, does this mean my boss has been unhappy with me for like a year and I didn't know it? That's a reasonable, normal response when you consider it in the context of the widespread societal rejection that that person has experienced since they were very young, very little, and the internalized ableism that they struggle with. So here's the thing. When I first heard rejection sensitive dysphoria, I thought, oh, cool, another thing I need to know about my brain and how I'm different. But the more I sat with it, the less I liked it, because the more it started to feel like I shouldn't actually trust my emotions. I shouldn't trust what I'm feeling because my feelings are too big and I shouldn't trust them. And that's not cool, and it's not right, and it feels like you're just going to start gaslighting yourself more and more, when in reality, what I feel like I was actually experiencing is much better defined by rejection sensitivity from the trauma literature, and quite frankly, from going through my own mental health journey for my own individual traumas. The rejection sensitivity piece, that stuff reacts and responds to trauma techniques from mental health, similar to like interpersonal traumas that I've experienced. So like, if it responds to trauma treatment and it feels like a traumatic trigger, I feel like maybe we can call a spade and say like, this rejection sensitivity is from societal trauma that results in ableism and societal bias. That's what I think. That's my 2 cents on that. I can hear my dog outside the door. Hi, Booba. Hi, Atina. Pew pew. And back to finish my ADHD hot takes. Hot takes! Because I got disrupted by my rather demanding husky mix of a dog. Let's go on to hot take number 3. Hot take number 3. Yeah. I probably need to stop doing that. Now, this one might be a real hot take out there, because I think this does exist still in the scientific literature as a common interpretation of the science, which is, people say ADHD brains lack dopamine. I don't think so. I don't think we lack dopamine. I think we have a different reward system that lights up differently to different stimuli. I think our brains consider rewards. What our brains consider rewards are different than what neurotypical brains consider rewarding. Okay. Now, as far as I can tell, the little bit of a deep dive I did on this, most of where we get this idea of us lacking dopamine is from brain imaging studies and also genetic studies when you're looking at studies based in humans. I know there's animal models, but honestly, when we're talking about conditions that involve like executive function and higher reasoning and like meta, like your perception of yourself within the world and problem solving and all that stuff, like you can't really ask a rat. So it's hard to know if the rat models really are truly exhibiting ADHD behaviors or not. So I'm going to leave off the animal models because how do we know? I don't speak rat. Also, rats in labs don't exactly exist in a natural environment, so even the behaviors they show in a lab in a maze is likely very different than what rats do. And also, quite frankly, like there's also that theory that like ADHD is actually really useful for like foraging behaviors if you're like searching for food out in the wilderness. So maybe in Neolithic times, we maybe were like the bomb dig at finding the foods, you know? We might have been the really good humans to have around for that. But if that's the case, that animals like rats that like forage for their food all the time likely already exhibit ADHD-like behaviors in nature. So another thing about animal models, like, do they apply? I don't know. Nonetheless, so if we look at human research, we look at research done on human brains, the best we've got would be brain imaging, which typically would be functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI studies, which it's already correlational. It's a pretty strong correlation, though. The idea that, you know, fMRI, you're going to inject some kind of dye or tracer, and then it's showing increased blood flow to certain areas of the brain during activities. And we figure that that correlates probably with increased activity, because when cells in your body start being more active and burning through more energy stores, you need an increased exchange of oxygen and carbon monoxide to those cells. Carbon monoxide. No, that's not good. We don't want to do that. You need to increase the oxygen delivery and the carbon dioxide taking away from that area with those cells. So it's a pretty good correlation, but essentially what you do in an MRI study, and I don't know if you've never been in an MRI, this is for you to know. I've had a head MRI done like clinically for a concussion thing, post-concussive thing, but in an MRI, you are sitting, you have to be very still. They like kind of strap you in there because if you move too much, you're not going to get good images, clean, crisp images. So you're kind of strapped down. You have to be very, very still. ADHDers, are you with me on this? You have to be very still, like no fidgeting. You have to be really still in that MRI machine. And in a lot of functional magnetic resonance imaging, I can't say that 10 times fast, fMRI studies, what they do is they put people in there, and then there's usually like a screen or something, because you can look up, right? You can look like directly in front of you, essentially, which is up because you're laying on your back. And they put a screen in front and they make you do tasks, essentially, to figure out this fMRI. You could also do by sound. People could talk to you through a microphone and you can talk. So there is that as well. But basically, they put you in there and they give you a task to do. So I want ADHDers out there. Let me know if this sounds like fun times. Because if you're doing a study like this, if you're going with traditional cognitive science, psychology type studies, okay, you're going to put some ADHDers, likely adults, because you don't want to have to deal with trying to put kids in an MRI because that gets ethically concerning because of how still they have to be and how small it is and it's confining. It can be pretty traumatic for kids to be in there. So typically adults we're talking. Okay. So you take adults diagnosed with ADHD, you put them in their fMRI, and you want to compare them to non-ADHD adults, right? To neurotypical, ideally, adults. And if you're going on ADHD, when you're talking about attention, if you really want to study their attention system, what you're going to probably use are standard attention tasks from cognitive science and psychology. What are standard attention tasks, you might ask? Well, kind of the gold standard, what's been around forever, are tasks like trail making tasks, where it's like you have to connect the dots basically to make a picture, or you have to go from like a letter a number to a letter to a number to a letter, trail making B. You could do vision field tasks. You could do like a divided attention type task, like a working memory task where it's like you're, somebody says a sequence of numbers and you have to say it backwards. You could also do just a recall task where you say them out loud that way. You could do a Stroop task that has a little bit of language interaction as well, but Stroop test would be one way of doing a little bit of like kind of a somewhat of an attention type thing. But yeah, nonetheless, they are those sort of tasks where it's like they're how do I want to say this? Boring. They sound so boring to me. And I've had to do these tasks. Like I was in a traumatic brain injury class for speech language pathology. Okay. So in my TBI class, so like we learn about these tests because we have to give them in order to assess cognitive function in people who've had brain injuries. That's part of our role in a hospital for speech language pathologist. And, I remember the professor being like, I need a volunteer to do this task. And I would sit there every time like, oh God, please not me. Please not me. Please not me. Please don't ask me to do these tasks in front of people. Like, I'm not good at these tasks, like, and it takes so much energy for my brain to do those sort of tasks because they just sound repetitive and not fun at all. They don't sound rewarding. I'll put it that way. Okay. I would not be too surprised if my brain's reward systems don't really light up for a task for doing a trail making task well. I don't think that's going to be a thing my brain's going to like. So I would not be too surprised if ADHD or brains didn't really light up that much for certain tasks. And also, all that really tells you is that our brains are lighting up differently. The dopamine areas of our brains are getting active differently. It doesn't really explain why they're not lighting up. It doesn't actually say there's no dopamine there. It doesn't say there's a lack of dopamine. It just says that on those tasks, we don't have as much dopamine production. Which, like, okay, what do we have dopamine production for then? That's my question, because we definitely have it, because we hyper-focus and we have things we like doing and we like focusing on. So I think that my suspicion is we have a different reward system and it lights up under different conditions, and maybe conditions that an fMRI is not the best environment to see it light up in, just due to the fact it's constraining, Now, there's also genetic studies where people have done like twin studies and sibling studies of one with ADHD, one without, and they found like maybe there's some genes. They found like a genetic correlate to like dopamine systems, and that there might be like a mutation within that gene expression in ADHDers and not ADHDers. But once again, that's still just telling you that it's different. That's all it's telling you. There's a genetic difference there. That's really all it's saying. It doesn't say we lack dopamine. It doesn't say anything about how dopamine is used in our brains. So that's my take on that. I don't think it's that we lack dopamine. I think that's a very pathologizing like interpretation of the data. I think the best data we have is that we have a different reward system. And I think most ADHDers would not be surprised to hear that our brains find different things rewarding. Maybe I'm crazy. That's how I feel about that. So let me know what you think. Okay. Let's keep plugging along here too. Hot take number 4. Hot take number 4. Okay. Hot take number 4 is you just need more strategies. It kind of relates to hot take number 1, really, but you just need more strategies. That's all you need to manage your ADHD. You just need more strategies. That's it. Fixed. Done. You need medication strategies. Boom, you're done. Okay. Now listen. I am a big fan of strategies. I love strategies. I teach strategies. Speech language with like the cognitive communication piece, it's strategies all the way down, guys. It's like rabbit hole of strategies. I know a lot of cognitive strategies. I got so many strategies that my strategies have strategies. You know what I mean? Like, I got so many. I've got different methods for making to-do lists depending on the task and time of day based off of how much mental energy I'm going to have. And if I start doing one to-do list one way and my brain starts to ignore it, I have to change it up to make it more novel and new to my brain. So I've got strategies on strategies on strategies. Strategies are great. That's how I get things done at all. Strategies, okay? The thing is, this is my issue with this advice, if you just need more strategies, is that every time I use a strategy, I am using up mental spoons. I'm using up mental effort, the amount of energy I have in the day to get through my day. This mental energy here, I'm using it up. Every single strategy costs me some spoons based off that spoon theory thing. You know what I'm saying? I'll put a link below if you don't know what it is. But so many strategies equals so much mental effort, so much mental energy, right? Now, if I'm using strategies all day long at work to get my billing done and my notes and my reports written and all of this stuff, I'm using strategies for all this not so fun repetitive stuff that I don't really want to do, but I got to do it. So strategies, right? Now, by the time I get home and I've got to like maybe cook, maybe ideally do the dishes, maybe ideally run some laundry, maybe I have some other household chores I need to get done that evening, or walk the dog, or whatever it is. If you have kids, you take care of your kids that evening, whatever. Point is, I'm coming home and my mental energy is already probably waning pretty big from using strategies all day long. So the idea of using more strategies when I get home to do more tasks that I don't want to do, to trick myself into like building up some kind of energy to do those tasks, is not very appealing. And it's not very surprising that so many of us end up so chronically burnt out, because all we're doing is strategizing all day long, and probably well past the point where we're actually out of mental spoons. And so we kind of can't use any more strategies and we're done. And we're just kind of pushing through it anyway, because that's, you know, internalized ableism and what we've been taught to do in order not to be lazy or whatever. So strategies are not a fix for ADHD. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't cure it. And there definitely is a limitation on how many strategies in a day you could manage to use. And so that's my hot take is, can we please stop with the advice of you just need more strategies? Just add more strategies on top of your strategies. What? No, what we probably need more of are accommodations and understanding and acceptance and just more compassion, quite frankly. That would be a lot more effective in my opinion. More accommodations, more compassion, more understanding, more acceptance than just even more strategies. Like maybe we could get some strategies for neurotypicals to understand us better and to help us out more and to meet us kind of halfway. Maybe neurotypicals are the ones who need more strategies. Yeah! This is my final hot take. 5. Numero 5. I didn't know whether to go into like Italian or Spanish for the number there, so. Now, this is just a little thing, and I tried to make it kind of pithy, and I don't know if I made it, but my number 5 hot take is that organizational systems, you know, like the Marie Kondo stuff, and like, I'm not affiliated with any of this stuff, but like container store stuff, like so-and-so system or this system or that system, those kind of systems that you buy, right? Those are to ADHDers what the diet cycle is to people who are like chronic dieters or victims of the wellness/diet industrial industry situation. More organizational systems to ADHDers, that's like what we do. And it kind of relates to that, more strategies, right? Like we're always looking for that one organization system, the magical organization system, the boxes or the little sorting things or however what, that's going to make the label maker, all that stuff that's going to make our life organized and going to make things easier to do. We're looking for the magic bullet, you know? And I don't know how many ADHDers out there have actually found it, because if you're like me, you buy an organization system, you set it up, it works for like maybe a couple months, and then you kind of start going back to what you did before. And you have to kind of start over again. You know, you either have to like get up your energy to put that organization back in place and try it again, or you're on the lookout for a new organization system that maybe will work better. We moved through COVID shutdown. And when we moved, I had like graveyards of parts and boxes and things of different organization systems and methods that I had tried over the years that just didn't work, that I had to get rid of during the move. So I don't have those things. I would slay them out and video them if I did. But yeah, strategies on strategies and organization systems on organization systems. And it's just the diet cycle, basically. It's just more of that. You know, if you just find the right one, or you just use enough energy, or it's back to that beginning of like, if you can get yourself organized. You know what I mean? And I don't know. The best I've got at this point is just getting like baskets and stuff, and like things are piled by category and my drawers are a mess, but they're categorized. I got the random stuff drawer. I got like the packet drawer, you know, the soy sauce and ketchup and all that jazz. I got that drawer. You know, I got random baking stuff drawer, random cooking stuff drawer, which are like where you find utensils for cooking. And like, I've got the random stuff drawer of like where you find batteries and rubber bands and like random stuff like that, you know? I got that kind of organization system, but are those drawers perfectly neat? No. No, they are not. Are they ever going to be? Probably not. Have I tried to make them neat before with like little teeny boxes and things? Yes. Did it work? No. No. Stuff just got kind of thrown on top of the boxes. So then the boxes became more of the pile. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? Best I've got is like put a container where you put things. You got a bunch of yarn for crochet or something? Get a basket for it. Put your yarn in there. Done. It's your yarn basket. Organized, you know? That's the closest I've got. I haven't gotten to the point of being able to make things neat and tidy all the time. Like, I just don't think, and honestly, at this point in my mid-40s, I just kind of want to give up on some of that because, you know, like, I don't have the energy left. And it kind of gets to that, like, there is a little bit of that ableist idea here where, like, cluttered space equals cluttered mind. I hate that phrase, you guys. I'm so tired of hearing that at this point. First off, it always felt shamey, so I never really liked it, but I definitely don't like it now because you know what? I understand that my brain seems cluttered to neurotypicals. I get that, but my brain is not cluttered to me. This is just how my brain works. It's just how it functions. It's just how it is. All this different divergent thoughts and making all these connections from this to that. That's just my default. That's just how my brain goes. It's not clutter. It's just processing. This is how it is. You know what I'm saying? You could put me in a super clean, minimalist space, and my brain is still going to be doing this. It's not like the space is the cause for the cluttered mind. No, it's like my space becomes a reflection of how much mental energy I have left, how I'm categorizing things, what I need to access and when, and am I using that thing? And, oh, did I just put it down in a room it doesn't belong in and forget that it's there, and now I got to go put it in its actual basket or bucket? Like, that's all it is. You know what I mean? Maybe we don't need more organizational systems. Maybe we just need a little more self-compassion and like just get containers for where you put things. That's my best advice. I don't know. Don't try to like reinvent yourself every single time you want to try to organize because you just can't. Like, that's so much energy. You know what I mean? Now, my one caveat to that is like hygiene concerns. Like if you struggle with like throwing out like old pizza boxes and like taking food containers into the kitchen and stuff like that. And yeah, like we do need to work on that because like that is definitely a concern for like pests and like disease and hygiene and things like that. So like, yeah, we got to work on stuff like that. And the best I've got there is like the chunking it out. Like take the dirty dishes from the dining room or from the living room if you're eating while you're watching Netflix on the couch like I do. Like move it into the kitchen and place it on the counter. And like, is it going to be in the sink or the dishwasher at that point? No, but it's pretty close. So next time you're in the kitchen, you can just pop it in there, you know? That's my best advice on that is chunking those out. Told you I have strategies for strategies. Reviewing the hot takes. Let's go. Hot take review. First off, a lot of adult ADHD advice out there is really ableist. So ableist. It kind of just sets us up to fail, quite frankly. Number two, I think people are talking about rejection sensitivity when they say rejection sensitive dysphoria on social media. I think everyone's talking about rejection sensitivity, more of the trauma response than the actual rejection sensitive dysphoria. And the way it was originally defined, I don't think rejection sensitive dysphoria, can't say the word too fast, actually really exists, quite frankly. My third hot take was we don't actually lack dopamine. We just have a different reward system that reacts differently to different stimuli than neurotypicals, which isn't too surprising. But number four is the myth of you just need more strategies. You don't need more strategies. You probably need more self-compassion and like actual rest because we only have so much energy to get through our days. Especially if you're an adult, you probably have so many strategies already. And maybe you need to refine some and try to find some that really work for you. But I don't think you're going to figure out strategies that work for you if you don't start from a place of compassion and like actually taking a break when you need it and like resting your brain and getting over your burnout a bit. Like you can't really figure out what works for you if you're just constantly tying yourself up in knots trying to be something else. You know what I mean? And number 5 is that organizational systems, like the kind that you buy in the store, the named systems, are basically to ADHDers what diets tend to be for anyone who's caught up in the wellness industry / diet cycling stuff that's out there, you know, because our brains are unique and they need unique strategies, individualized strategies, and a lot more understanding and compassion for people who live with us rather than being told exactly how to organize. Because I think our organization for an ADHDer, I think, will look very different than it will for a neurotypical anyway. Kind of like cluttercore or, you know, maximalism, if you will, perhaps. My main takeaway from a lot of this stuff is that I have developed over the last few years of my post-diagnosis life, I have a really big aversion to any theory, any hypothesis, any advice, anything out there that basically suggests we need to not trust ourselves or do what other people tell us to do. Right? Like, we need to organize the way other people perceive organization, or we need to not trust our emotional system because it's too sensitive and we shouldn't trust it, or things that tell us to somehow ignore or reject all of our experiences with bullying and social rejection and isolation, and that those things aren't really real, right? Like, bleh, I don't like any of that stuff, because the real kicker here is that, and the real takeaway here is that society is the thing that's been gaslighting us our whole lives into not trusting our instincts and our emotions. And then we get pathologized for being susceptible to manipulations and scams. And it's like, okay, society, well, listen, if you don't want us neurodivergents, us ADHDers and such, to be susceptible to things, and you don't want us to be in so much emotional pain, then how about stop telling us constantly how we need to change to make you more comfortable? Hey, how about make a little space for us, you know? So those were my hot takes for today, my ADHD hot takes. Hot takes! Let me know what you think. I don't know whether you agree with them or not. Do they relate to any of you guys, ADHDers out there? Anything make you feel more validated, or things that you just completely disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your ideas, your opinions. If you would like me to do a deeper dive on any of these topics, I definitely can. So just let me know also. But nonetheless, I hope you all have a great, however long it'll be before I post something. Be really kind to yourselves. Be compassionate with yourself and other people and all that stuff. And yeah, I guess above all else, keep it weird, guys. Keep it weird.